Could you please speak on silabbata-paramasa and what it is in detail, and is it really so easy as it is often declared? Just have the right...
Just a second, excuse me, because you want to say what you think it means, because I think it means something completely different in your perception than it means from Ajahn Jayasaros. So,
okay.
What did you?
Yeah.
What I thought
what
is
you just said.
that if you have a clear vision why you should practice sila and what's the purpose of sila. That's it. And this sounds too easy for me in comparison with all the other questions and how much it is, how much work it is to do.
Yeah. Well, in the really of the three fetters that are abandoned by the Sotapanna, it's the attachment to the view of body and mind as being self, Sakkaya Ditthi, which is the key one. And the other two are almost like dependent upon that one. So the one which is really penetrated in meditation or at the moment of insight is the Sakkaya Ditthi. And then the understanding of what is not the path is very clear, and what is conducive or obstructive to practice. So you probably remember from reading sutta about all the various ascetic practices that were prevalent in the time of the Buddha, and even if you remember the ascetic who practiced everything like a dog, and thought he was going to become liberated through that. So that's a very clear example of someone with silabbata-paramasa. So the idea that a certain kind of practice will purify through itself. It is that practices of physical, verbal practices in themselves have a purificatory effect. So it manifests as an attachment to particular ways of doing things. You know, we say you have to be vegetarian before you can realize enlightenment, and then if you're a monk, you have to walk bare feet, or you only have to eat one meal a day, or you have to do this practice or that practice, and if you don't do that particular practice, then you won't become enlightened. Or it also manifests in this attachment to meditation techniques. Only this technique is the real technique. All the other techniques, are not the real thing. So it's taking something which is often beneficial in itself, but just putting too much onto it and expecting it to have some inevitable result independent of the mental states of the person who is applying it. And the Buddha says that's not the case. So sila, in this case, silabbata. Bata is in Indian languages the B and the V are often mixed up, so it's wata. So it's sila is in this case means things that you don't do, and wata is things that you do, things that you take on. So acts of renunciation or trainings that you take on, and attaching to them and giving them too much importance.
May I ask a more simple question, but I really would like to know your view of the value and your way of practicing walking meditation.
Yeah, well, the walking meditation is extremely valuable for a number of reasons. Firstly, if you have some physical condition or illness that makes sitting difficult, it's a ready-made alternative to sitting. If you want to practice throughout the day for many hours, very few people can sit for a whole day, and whether that or not, that would be a good idea anyway. But by alternating sitting and walking, you can practice for many hours and not feel too much, and not too much physical pain. If you start off, you can do half an hour of each, and then an hour of each, and you can get up to 2 hours of each, or sit for 2 hours and walk for 3 hours, and day's gone in a flash. You don't know where it's gone. Plus, walking is just so pleasant. It's just walking in nature. Usually between two trees, up and down, or you can even do it just walking through the park or something. So often people can get very tense and a little bit obsessive when they do too much sitting, and walking is a more relaxed kind of feeling. Because when we're sitting, it's kind of special. We're doing this kind of special thing. We're sitting in a special way, and we're we set everything up and we close our eyes. But when we're walking, it's something we do in our daily life anyway, and it's not so different, especially if we walk at a more or less normal pace, as we do in the forest tradition, rather than in a very, very slow way of the Burmese Vipassana techniques. And this leads on to one of the advantages of walking meditation, and that is that the kind of awareness that arises in the walking meditation is very much more easily integrated into daily life than that which arises from sitting. And every day we walk quite a lot, even if we're working in an office or a more sedentary life. At least you're walking up and down stairs, or walking from one room to another room, or from one building to another building, or building to your car, or your car to a building. So there are lots of small pockets of time, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, that you can make into walking meditation periods. And so in the daily life, even if you've got quite a lot going on, it's a very good way of just re-establishing mindfulness, and using those short periods as a way of meditating in the walking posture. So the walking naturally stimulates thinking. When someone, classically, you want to trying to work something out in your head, you walk up and down, sort of trying to work. It really stimulates thinking. So a lot of meditators, they don't like it because it's more difficult to become calm, usually, walking than sitting. But it's like a wild animal, like a wild horse. Once you're able to practice in the walking posture, the mind is calm, that very energy and rhythm of the walking stimulates the wisdom faculty and investigation of Dhamma. And you avoid the dangers of this kind of laziness or stagnation that can arise in the sitting posture, because you never get quite so calm when you're walking, because once your eyes are open and you're aware of that many more sensations. But most monks or nuns, when they have a walking meditation path at their kuti or where they practice, and usually they will have a sitting place by the side of the walking. So if you're walking and you find that your mind's becoming very peaceful and you want to go into that stillness, their meditators will either stand and close their eyes and have that kind of stillness as the basis for samadhi, or else to sit by the side of the path. But generally the walking meditation is one which is very, once you developed an ability to do it, then it's very good for investigation, because you have the raw material of the sense fields, at least of the of form and sound and physical sensation, to be as a basis for investigation. Mostly we make a path between 20 and 30 paces long, and it depends on your preference. The criteria is that if the path is too short and you're turning around backwards and forwards too much, then it's irritating. But if the path is too long, then it's a bit too easy to become distracted. So between 20 and 30 paces is about is perfect. My path is 27 paces, and that's because why? It's just numbers. I like number 3 is a very important number, and the number 9 is an important number, or considered a auspicious number. So 3 9s are 27, and 27 paces. That's my.
I'm synesthetic, and 27 number is a good number.
Yeah, because
the color combination yellow and
okay. He sees numbers as colours, so that's
no, in colours actually.
In colours,
it's
yeah.
not just
Okay.
colours.
So what number is my robe?
Probably a 9 or a 6.
Great, nice.
6 maybe.
Yeah.
9 is a little bit darker.
Okay, so okay, that's a diversion. So you have three points: the beginning of the path, the middle of the path, and the end of the path. Okay, so and you can mark just whatever with some natural marker or whatever. But the idea being that these are the points where you just check whether your mind is still present and on the object or not. So in the case of a 27 pace path, then that means every 13 and a half paces you're checking your mind, and that's not many seconds, is it? What?
Oh, I'm impressed. It's very sad.
Yeah. So
optimistic, I would say.
yeah. So and you can give yourself one thing you can do is just to give yourself a challenge, like how many lengths of the path before the first distraction. Or you can have like 5 stones in your hand, and as the first distraction you let one to the ground, and the second see how long it takes before your 5 stones disappear. So you can sometimes making things into a little bit of a game and a challenge it adds a little bit of fun to it, it's kind of not too serious. Most meditators, I would say, but not all. So the thing with meditation, I think, it's like medical science. When doctors can be very, you've got to do it like this, and this is the right way to do it. But what a doctor means is like 80% maybe or 90% of patients will have a good result with this, but it's never 100%. And it's similar with meditation. So the basic teaching is mindfulness of breathing doesn't work well with walking meditation, but that's not 100%. And if your sitting practice is mindfulness of breathing, you can give it a try and see. But mostly people find because the rhythm of the breath and the rhythm of the walking are not in harmony, that it's not such a good object. But the one method to use in the walking is the sensation of the foot as it contacts with the ground, like this. So it's the sensation. So what do you want? You're trying to develop an anchor for awareness. So the thing you want is to be in this clarity, clear, stable mind in the present, and this is bringing you back to the present again and again, that sensation. So that's its role, to bring you back. So an added technique, something which will help you to do that, is to use a mantra. So as you probably know that in Thailand we use the mantra Buddho. So it's the word Buddha with the O on the end, and it's the O is a long sound, whereas A is a short sound. So in mindfulness of breathing, usually in sitting, the out breath becomes subtle and long. So what happens if you have like Buddha, then your A is going to end long before the exhalation ends, and it's usually at the end, towards the end of an exhalation, that the mind tends to wander because it runs out of interest. So if you have O, you see you can have, and you can extend that. So it's like But, and then the out breath is to the end of the breath. You see, that's in walking. So you can have Buddho, but really any two-syllable word which has some meaning is usable. I mean, Buddha means the awakened one, means wakeful. So it's a reminder of the essential quality of the meditating mind is Buddha. So you say Buddho, you're basically reciting what you're supposed to be doing, or it's a reminder as well as a simple word to reduce or eliminate distracting thought. If you come to one of these 3 points, the beginning, the middle, or the end of the path, and your mind is distracted, you can just stand for a few minutes and just take 1 or 2 breaths and re-establish attention. There are all kinds of ways of, in the initial minutes of a walking meditation practice. If you have memorized chants, like to use a chant as you're walking. And so sometimes I do this. Ga, ra, ni, ya, ma, ta, pu, sa, le, na, yan, tang, san, tang, pa, tang, a, pi, sa, me. So you can go through a sutta, and just as a way of like a warm-up in a meditation, for the first period meditation, to use Pali chant. But then with all, I think most or all meditation, the idea is you start off with the easy, and then you move to the more difficult. You start off with the coarse and you move to the subtle. So if you have a sutta or a very diverse thing to start off with, then but still you need to come to a central focus, and then the sensation of the foot in the soles of the feet can then provide your your focus. Another kind of walking meditation, you can do loving kindness, metta meditation. So you see, you start off with may I be well. So forth. May I be kind. May I be wise. May I be free. Okay? And so that's the 4 words. May I be well, may I be kind, may I be wise, may I be free. And then you can change the I to may he, may she, may they, may we. And you can adapt that until that sense of metta and loving kindness becomes, you can feel that in your body, in the chest area or wherever, and then you take that emotion, or that feeling as your object. But if the object starts to fade, or you start to lose your mindfulness, then you go back to the discursive, to the words, just to build up the energy of mindfulness. So those are a few possibilities. You have anything to add?
Tanjan, would you like to say something about a difficult problem about walking meditation?
The difficult problem?
Yeah.
Which one?
I don't know if,
You can say something.
No, it's a serious. I'm unsure about the answer, but it's an interesting situation. You know, like one question is, the Buddha of course says that it's one advantage of walking meditation is that the samadhi will last very long, but for most people would say there is a limit to the level of absorption, if you want, simply due to the nature of walking. But there is this one sutta where the Buddha says he can enter not only first jhana during walking, but even fourth jhana. And I wonder if you've ever heard a claim or that a credible claim that somebody has entered any genuine absorption during walking meditation, or is what do you make of that? I mean, like there is no breath, there is no it's like there is no physical movement. So how does it go along with walking?
Don't know.
It's a difficult problem. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, there are two possible. I mean, in terms of our tradition, as I say, if someone feels their mind is going to go into a state of absorption, they stand or they sit by the side of the path. So either the fourth jhana the Buddha is referring to does not mean complete absence of body awareness or absence of breath.
But that's how it's defined, isn't it? The cessation of the breath.
So I guess the Buddha just kind of floats along.
Well, I was thinking that you would suggest that it's very brief periods of entering and exiting. You know, a kind of I don't know if that's or if I don't know. It's no, normally, you know, like it's I mean, just to fill you in. Basically, if somebody says in anything that we consider, if they would say that they enter jhana while talking or walking or anything. That's very kind of them, because we just absolutely don't have to waste any further time with that person's assessment of practice. You know, it's like they're obviously using these terms in a very different way, and we wish them good luck and hope all the best for them. But we just speak different languages, and it's one of the sort of interests, you know, like how it's so difficult to find out what jhana really means. And I guess the teachers that we respect all think of it's a very deep and hard to get and more difficult to sustain or control state. And what the Buddha says is sensuality is gone. So yeah. Yes, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So,
don't know.
Did you ever hear anything? Like Lumpa Khao is such an inspiration, probably because of you always teaching it. Lumpa Khao is he foremost in something? But he's one of the great disciples of Lumpo Man, and he is famous for. And I've been sort of injected with this by Ajahn Jayasaro since I'm a very young monk, and it made it sort of almost obligatory to fall in love with walking meditation as your student. Thank you. And so he was famous. He had 3 walking paths, one for Buddha, Dhamma, and one for Sangha, and he would walk 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours at noon, I guess, and then 3 hours in the evening.
And he'd also go an arms round and also sweep the monastery.
Yeah, and then people said to him, and he did this 11 years after he had become an Arahant. And it's an interesting monk anyway, because he got into meditation because he caught his wife with another man.
Yes,
And so you think of people ordained for that reason, you know. I mean, it's a good reason, but how far is it going to take you? But then he had wasn't that I think he wanted to kill him, wasn't it, or something like that? So compliment to the wife, he must have liked her. But then there's also an interesting problem, like where he did that 11 years something after he was enlightened, and so lay people, no, wasn't it? Oh, it's lay people, maybe monks, I don't know. People asked themselves, Lumpo, you are already enlightened. Why are you walking 9 hours a day meditation? And he said, well, that you're enlightened doesn't mean you have to be lazy. Which is also an interesting... So, would you know what he did when he was meditation?
Can't remember. Yeah. But my idea of meditation is it's the optimum functioning of the human organism. So that's why Arahants meditate a lot. It's the optimum functioning of your human organism. What else is more?
Like doing nothing would be the perfect, like fourth jhana, or no zero experience, no.
No, this is a complete absence of defilement and expressed in a noble form. Developing metta jhana, loving kindness.
It's the best you can do with a bad situation.
Yeah. What else is there to do?
Yeah. I think most of us who have some sort of teaching obligation feel that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like Vipavatana.
Still, I mean, as a monk, often people say, well, I can't, it's too far away, I can't get to see you, but just to know that you're there in the forest or practicing, make people happy. And this is, one of the good things about being a monk, just living your life as a monk makes people happy. And,
Okay, so bring on more difficult problems.
easy ones are all right.
Easy
so-
problems.
A very easy one. When you're doing walking meditation, do you only concentrate on the soles or also the parts up to the knees?
It's really up to you. I mean, there's no fixed thing. I mean, there's the classic meditation is the soles of the feet, but there's no reason why you shouldn't extend it up to the knee. And if it works for you, you have this. As I say, if anything I've learned over the years is people's minds are so different. And I've met people who had very good meditation practice, and yet they're applying techniques and things which or making most basic mistakes that even meditation teachers will say, don't do this, and they've done it, and they still become their minds become calm and clear and bright. So. There seems to be so much variation in people's minds, and with the body, you can do a very good meditation in walking is the skeleton, because as the heel comes down and that pressure, then you can feel all through your skeleton right up to your skull. And so just feeling this walking skeleton, this is very good for body meditation. And the sensations up to the knee, including the knee, that's also... See, the thing is, it's a lot of trial and error. It's not like that there are certain... I don't know if you're familiar with this phrase, Dhammanu Dhamma Patipata, which means practice of the Dhamma, which is in line with the Dhamma, or is in harmony with the Dhamma. So the idea is that the word Dhamma has two different meanings. It's like the main principles and the practical application, if you like. So once you grasp the main principles, then you can be somewhat creative with the actual details, as long as it's within the boundaries of the large principles. So you can't compromise on the large principles, but you can try different things out as long as you're sure that they don't conflict with the larger principles.
What would be examples of people?
Yeah, I knew you'd ask me. I'm just trying to think now. What was the? What's like counting heartbeats? I mean, most people say don't count heartbeats. It's not a good...
Right.
Yeah, it's just not good. It doesn't work, it's not good, it's not healthy, it can cause health problems. And yeah, I've met someone who developed very good meditation, not having a teacher, just, let me try this, and counted heartbeats and got very peaceful.
I think you also had... I don't know if you can remember this, but you mentioned that you had, I think, a Thai fellow who had, he was just contemplating the dangers of sensuality and would, just by thinking about this, would get into samadhi, no?
Yeah. Mm. So there's always, in so many areas of life, where this causality is so, there's always this question of because of or in spite of, because whenever you have you follow a path and you have a result, the tendency is to assume that the result came because of the cause, but it might well be in spite of the cause, or what you see as the cause. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, totally. I mean, the most absurd kind of thing I find is like if an unwholesome thought triggers a deepening of the meditation. It can lead you to a wrong conclusion, but it makes it makes sense if you have like the mind sort of shrinks from that, and you but if you were to look at it like you know, from just the plain data, you may think that.
So I'm a bit biased on this point. Okay, so you have to take my word for this, but you know, my impression, I've met so many incredible Christians, you know, and for me, you know, these are wonderful people in spite of the teachings rather than because of them, you know. And that if they'd been had the full good fortune to be exposed to Buddhist teachings, then they would have benefited greatly.
That's good. The Buddha said it's in a bad teaching, it's very good if you follow just a little bit. Which is bad in a good teaching. So the nicest Christians usually are the ones that are very sort of secular, common sense kind of, no? And they have a little bit of improved sila and.
But I mean, after a while, you get. I remember when I was my first rains retreat as a monk. I was staying in a very backward little monastery in the middle of nowhere. It's a very kind of austere place. And at the end of the rains retreat, the months following the end of the rains retreat is called the Katina period, and any monastery with 5 monks or more has a Katina ceremony, which is basically the main fundraiser for the whole year for the monastery. But the heart of the ceremony is the offering of Katina cloth, because at least in the early days, then following the end of the rains retreat, monks would make up a new set of robes and then go off wandering. So lay people would offer cloth at that time. So it's the time for making robes and receiving robe cloth. There was so in the Wat Pong tradition, the Ajahn Chah tradition, when you have a Katina ceremony, then you invite all the other branch monasteries, of which there are hundreds now, and various monks come, and then there are Dhamma talks right through the night from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the morning. And then in the morning the cloth is offered. So me and a couple of other monks heard there was going to be a Katina ceremony in a monastery. It was about 6 or 7 kilometers away, and so we asked the abbot if we could walk to this monastery in the afternoon and participate and come back the following day. So the abbot said okay. So we set off walking through the countryside, and we got lost, and we came to this big like stream or unfordable. We had to do a big detour, and so what should have been like an hour and a half walk turned into almost 3 hours. And by the time we got there, I was totally exhausted, so exhausted. But it's like about 7 o'clock at night, and now I've got to sit for the next 8 hours, 10 hours or something. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm just, it's like this. They look at the clock somewhere, it's like 9 o'clock, it's a kind of dreary feeling. So there was this monk sitting next to me, and he's sitting like a Buddha. And it's like 9 o'clock, and it's 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. He doesn't move. He's like, wow, it's incredible. And so I got to know him after this, and just wanted to speak with him. And he's a kind of inspiring monk. And so about a month later, I went back to Ajahn Chah's monastery. It was almost 2 months. And I was asking after this monk, and everybody said, so I said, what happened? Well, he said he went into the cloth cupboard, the cloth store, and he took out all of the cloth in the cloth store, piled it up in the central area, and set fire to it. And he was crazy, And so, and this is, I'm going to let you know that quite a lot of the most inspiring people you see around are actually they're the crazy ones. Yeah. He was in the world of his own.
But when you were talking with him, he appeared lucid?
Well, because I was still very young. My Thai wasn't so good. And it's that whole thing of someone who's senior to you, and you're kind of very deferential, and you don't really pick up on that. So you just think he's got this like his eyes, it's just glowing,
Seeing the light.
Yeah, and then I realised a lot of these really most radiant people are the weird ones. Yeah. So don't assume when you see someone who seems like really so glowing and radiant people, quite the opposite.
Well, Venerable Obaso used to sit like that.
Yeah, he was crazy.
Like a natta, about like all out crazy. They thought they were controlling his mind state with the way they put the light. And I'm sure they did. I mean, like, they could have, maybe, but they didn't, for sure. No, it's like, I personally, I think, don't you think that this tangent, I feel that it's perfectly okay for crazy people to come to the monastery. They're looking for help, and they're trying their best to make the best of it, but it's just it just doesn't usually help that kind of condition.
Well, basically, if you're in a monastery and you're an abbot or you're in any kind of teaching position, and you see someone starting to go a bit strange, the first thing you do is stop meditating. It's the worst thing for people who. And what you want to do is go in the kitchen, help out making food, do some gardening.
Keep them talking.
Keep talking, and just be normal. And don't go off by yourself. Don't meditate. And that usually works after a while. It takes some time. So this idea that meditation is a kind of a panacea, you got any problem, you just meditate and it'll all go away. It's not by any means true.
How many of the people that where you know the story, when they really went, crazy, they fully recovered?
Yeah, there's a famous story of Mercedes. You remember the story? Okay, I'll tell you the story. So the monk who ordained together with me is the abbot of Ratanawan, where Anita was staying recently. He was given the job of teaching the Vinaya during the Pansa, during the rains retreat. This is a practice in forest monasteries. So there's a study of the discipline during the rains retreat. And there was a couple who came. So the husband was almost a sort of archetypal Latin effete aristocrat type, and he I don't know if you can, something out of like 100 Years of Solitude, that kind of, the Marquez kind of figure, and his wife was kind of intense, Latin, Spanish intense, and so she was called Mercedes, and she really wanted to come and meditate, and he didn't. He was going to this Rabindranath Tagore Center in Bengal, and so she asked him to come here with her, and so she had this kind of obsessive character, and she started to. We just noticed that we get to the meditation hall at just after 3 a.m, and she'd be there already before the monks, and then at night, she'd be there 10, 11 o'clock, and I don't know how late, and wasn't eating, and wasn't sleeping, and I had the most tortuous experience as an attendant monk, because the abbot at this time, Ajahn Pasano, he was worried about her, so he invited us around to his kuti, and I sit there as his companion. And she said, Mercedes, how's your practice going? And she said, I won't, but it's like, to get a sentence out, it took about 5 minutes, and you just go, come on. Just want to go up and shake her.
Make some coffee.
Pardon?
Make some coffee for her.
Yeah, more stronger, yeah. And so, she was really, worrisome. So then, and so she fell in love with the monk who was teaching the Vinaya, totally obsessed with him, and she turned against her husband, and then she also developed this fear of Thai people. So one day it was raining, and she's in the kitchen, and there was a tour bus of 50 Thai tourists coming in the monastery, and it was like so this is another literary allusion. Anyone read Carlos Castaneda? So she's like a witch out of Carlos Castaneda. She had this big knife, and his hair's running down. He's chasing after all these people with a knife. So it was, and then we get the husband, get the husband over, and he says, Mercedes, and she starts picking up stones and throwing them at her husband.
It's better than a knife.
Yeah, so yeah, it was quite dramatic, and so we had a German nurse who was there, and we asked her if she would inject this woman with
whatever we have
with Valium, and the nurse had ethical objections. She would. So we said, ethics are all right, but they go so far, don't they? So that evening, Ajahn Yanadhamma was in his kuti upstairs, and with luckily Ajahn Mel from Italy, who's now in Italy, was up speaking with him, and this woman ran up the stairs to his kuti. And onto the veranda. So the two monks locked themselves in the room. And this went on the whole night. There were 2 monks in the room, and the woman on the veranda. Whatever. And then this, I think first thing in the morning, someone came. She ran down the kuti and ran through the forest, and ran up into someone else's kuti, and by this time we got the biggest, like water, sort of big, and chased her through the forest, and captured her and carried her off to the local mental hospital. And now I am of the R.D. Lang generation, so like those, like this idea of mental illness is like a journey, and absolute, against any kind of medication for mental. But there was just no, we just got to that point where there was just no alternative. And I felt, really felt bad about it. And then, so they pumped her full of all these drugs, and 3 days later she left, and her husband left, and they went back to Spain. And then about a couple of weeks later, got this lovely letter from her saying, "Thank you so much for all your kindness and my time in the monastery, and I apologize if I caused any disruption." And so that's just my case of someone who seemed to make a full recovery through drugs and the kind of, mental hospital in Thailand is really quite so if people have, she obviously had a lot of underlying issues, we can say, with her husband and her life, and so in this case coming to a forest monastery in the middle of the jungle and meditating a lot, and just suddenly all this stuff just came out. Jesus. So every now and again the monk's life can be a little bit exciting as well, it's not always
So, before you talk about Christians, a question came to my mind, and is that wrong views lead to lower rebirth, and I know some Christians, and they have usually a good sense of ethics and their ethics, and others that one more understands and do actions that are not that wholesome. Then I have a hard time understanding how believing in a God creator might lead to a lower rebirth.
No, I wouldn't say that it does myself. I think that we can say that Buddhism is, I think, sort of you could say a universal religion, in the sense that in belief system religions, the key factor of what happens after you die is your belief system, your beliefs. Okay, and so you have to have my set of beliefs before you can go to heaven. That's like the key to the gate is what you believe in. So inevitably you have divisiveness, because so you have immediately you have an ethical problem. Well, what's your responsibility to all the rest of the people in the world that share my beliefs if they're going to go to a bad place? Should you try to force them to change their beliefs, or persuade them, or just keep away from them? Or so so many of the problems we can see come from this point of view. So my understanding is Buddhism says it's not really what you believe, it's how you act. And basically, if you're kind and moral, generous, honest, then you'll have a good rebirth. And that's the same whether you're a Buddhist or a Christian or a Muslim or an animist or whatever. It's independent of whether you believe in a creator God or not. It's how you treat the people around you, and how you live your life. So for a Buddhist, there's absolutely no problem about the idea of Christians going to heaven or Muslims going to heaven. It's, if they're good people and they lead a good life, then they will. So Miccha Ditthi will prevent them from developing, or going beyond samsara or finding liberation, but not to a happy life in this life or in a future life. I remember reading an article written by a liberal English journalist, the Guardian journalist, that kind of left-wing liberal kind of, and she's a mother and got a difficult early teenage girl, and she was talking about a holiday she had where she visited, I think, family of a husband or something, but she ended up in like redneck, very Christian or Mormon kind of household, and it's just incredibly uncomfortable for her because the people she was staying with had this kind of rigidity and narrowness of view and very reactionary political views, and yet the thing was, their kids were lovely. They were so polite, so kind, thoughtful, considerate, and yet they'd been brought up with all the values that she felt repugnant. And yet she brought up her child with all these modern liberal ideas in a very sort of enlightened way, and the child was this selfish, narcissistic, someone she just didn't want to spend any time with. And this article was really, really well written about how that felt. Well, I think in England, it seemed to me that there was, I think, since I left, that there's this idea that being polite is somehow inauthentic, or hypocritical, and so there was this sort of the. I see a real, maybe it's because I get old, but I see a real decline in good manners, or the fact that good manners is something that's even to be praised or admired. Yes.
I have a question, maybe a bit in that direction too. So 3 years ago, at your last visit, you give a question about, or answer a question about the Islamic terrorists and how they think and how it's possible that these Islamic terrorists can do what they do. It was very interesting, and my question now is, in the last months or in the last 2 years in the political scenery worldwide, I think so, maybe in England too, with the Brexit and all that, and in America with Trump, there's a movement to the right. So and it corresponds with fear and anger of the people and all that. And the question is, what can we or I do personally, because if I take a look at the newspaper or at the television and I see the Trump thing and the Trump news and it's completely crazy and it drives me crazy too, that I'm getting anger and saying, oh, he's totally crazy. How is it can be possible? So, but that is not a good way of reaction. It's unhealthy. So I try to figure out what is a good way to react about that situation in my own life or in my own circumstances.
Well, firstly, I don't think, I'm thinking of my father. You see, my father he's left school at a very early age. He's from a very poor family, but he was always a very intelligent man, and one of his things is it's the duty of a citizen to keep up with the news. That's it's like it's your responsibility. So you have the morning news, and you have the news on at work, and every hour, news on the hour, and news in the evening. Well, no smartphones in those times, but the radio but it's, and that was, he felt that he was doing his civic duty. But I really don't agree with that. And when I was after many years of, as a young monk, of not, maybe once every few months there would be, find a Time magazine someone had left around and read it, but when I was the abbot of the monastery, then I used to get the Sunday edition of the Bangkok Post, which would have in the inside front page would have a summary of all the main news stories from the past week. And I found that was enough for me to know if people come to the monastery and they want to ask questions like in Thailand you see there is this kind of prejudice about modern urban people that monks don't really know about the real world, you see. So if you're in a teaching position, you did need to keep a certain knowledge of current affairs so that you can answer people and give a Buddhist perspective. And people say, well, what is the Buddhist perspective on this or that? So if you don't know what the problem is, you can't do that. So I did, but I found that was enough. Read half an hour on a Sunday morning or something, and you don't need basically to be reading and listening and following all this stuff to this extent. Just every now and again, just check in what's been happening, especially as I say, you're not the only one. It's people all over the world are feeling these same kinds of feelings right now. But also to remember that there's not this kind of thing called news, which is like holding up a mirror to what's going on in the world today. And the news is a industry, and it's promoting certain points of view, and it's conditioned by all kinds of things, and it's basically a money-making machine. And so what you're seeing is the news that will make money for the people who purvey it. So that in some cases that may be telling the truth makes money, but sometimes it's just those things which bring up strong feelings that they will always sell well. But I think that as a useful balance or counterbalance is your news. Your news mean like today and the last day, what's been going on in your circle, in your family, in your friends, and your real life, if you like. Your and so if you read the news, like the things that make us feel afraid or anxious or upset or angry, the bad news outnumbers the good news maybe 9-1. But if you look in your news, just what's happening around you, I think it's exactly the opposite. There are 9 good things to every one bad thing. And so to counter the news with your news or our news, it makes it just a little bit, puts in perspective of it. Yeah. I mean, the whole question, what is the news anyway? Who decides? And all the things that happen in the world in a day, who decides what's the news? And sometimes you when they have this kind of news cycle, you have these things like, okay, the Pope is flying to, I don't know, Greenland today, so he leaves at 8:30 in the morning, and he has like 10 o'clock news. The Pope is still on his flight to, how is that news? He's still sitting on a plane. He's got to.
Could you explain how to practice daily practice Yunso Manisakara? how
Well,
to understand it in
yeah.
daily practice.
Well, there are two main kinds of yoniso manasikara. Okay, so there's that which is directly concerned with the nature of things, and there is that which is concerned with reducing unwholesome dhammas in the mind and increasing wholesome dhammas in the mind. So, for instance, in the case where the mind is full of a lot of aversion and anger, then reflecting on people's good qualities or bringing up thoughts and reflections on loving kindness and compassion and forgiveness and so on, that would be applying the principle that in the mind at any one moment you can't have a wholesome and an unwholesome mental state, and for that reason a simple replacement technique is effective in many cases. So if your train of thought is an unwholesome train of thought, then you can choose a wholesome train of thought which directly counters it to replace it. And if you are diligent enough and you apply it continuously, you can do that, and the unwholesome thought will disappear. So this is how we use yoniso manasikara to, in ways to undermine the unwholesome train of thought, or to challenge the assumptions on which it's based, and to develop thoughts, and you can say of loving kindness, or if in the case of the mind is very caught up in sensuality, then thoughts about the unattractiveness of the human body or some part of the human body, or it's very lazy and indulgent, then reflections on death and the certainty of death and the uncertainty when death will come. So there are these kind of specific antidotes. There are discursive reflections or meditations which serve to reduce or to replace the unwholesome trains of thought. The other kind of yoniso manasikara is thought based, looking at the three characteristics. So when you're looking at something, or you're experiencing something, maybe take the impermanence, this too will pass, this is impermanent, it changes, and bringing up and turning the mind, then those things are already there. Okay, it's already impermanent, you have to make it impermanent, it's already dukkha, it's already anatta, but it's simply a perspective that you've overlooked, or you've not really applied yourself to. So consciously applying yourself to see, to perceive what is going on in terms of impermanence, or in terms of dukkha, or in terms of anatta. So those are the two kinds of yoniso manasikara. Is that clear? Is that clear, order?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a reference for that?
Huh?
Do you have a reference for that?
For what?
For these two kinds of yoniso manasikara?
Yes, of course.
Ah, thanks.
No, it's
Was that rude?
no, not at all. No,
No, for the first one I can supply you one, but for the second one, the three characteristics as a
I'm not sure. I'm not so well.
No, the first one is one from at the beginning of the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha says, what is the best opposite to... No? It's always the yoniso manasikara, and only with the doubt is even just but the three characteristics I wouldn't know.
I don't tend to memorize references and just sort of absorb stuff. And
But it is.
Well, the thing is that I remember, a particular teaching I was giving, for years, and I said, this is my kind of teaching, and then I was flicking through an old book of teachings of Ajahn Chah, and there it was, and I'd absorbed it so much I thought I thought it up myself.
What was it?
What was it? No, I can't remember now what it is. Let me think about it. My memory is shot.
Repressed now.
Embarrassed.
Delete.
I don't know if it's only my experience, I think no, but if I have really unwholesome thoughts, maybe anger or like that, I have the feeling that I have to be loyal to these thoughts. So for me it's often difficult to change. I know that it's unwholesome, but I can't change it because I have this feeling that it's I don't know, I have to be loyal or like that.
Yeah, this is the the dangers of language. When we apply a very uplifting word to something which is not very uplifting, then we get fooled by it. And I was when people have conflicts and arguments about quite petty things, what seem to be quite petty things, then why is someone so attached to this silly small thing? And of course, for them, it's not a silly small thing, but it's a silly small thing attached to a very big thing, But you don't make that same connection, so it's a silly small thing for you. But for that person, it's symbolic or it represents something. And then this is an aspect of mindfulness, particularly in terms of the how you connect small things to big things. And whether or not that's a valid connection, you see. So I was in my book I was thinking about for years I've been very frustrated that the systems of transliteration of Thai words into English is just such an absolute mess. It's inconsistent. It's it's not a system at all. And so there's a Norwegian monk who was in our monastery who had a PhD in linguistics, and he and I got together and we created this new way of transliterating Thai words into English. Which basically uses one of the most important things, it uses the diacriticals that we use in Pali to distinguish between short and long a, I, u, these sounds. So this is I was quite proud of this, that after years of this sloppy kind of transliteration, this was a system in which any reader could work out how this Thai word was pronounced in English. And so while I was at this meeting, there's a little deputation of monks. I know this is kind of sensitive issue, but we really don't think this works. It makes the book look weird, and it's off-putting to a reader. I'm not sure I agree with them, and so I mean I was thinking, what is it about this? And for me, it ties into larger issues of just the way that English-speaking people go around the world and expect everybody just to conform to their way of doing things. Okay, we don't have a letter in English for your letters, so you just conform to our way of writing. So for me, it's a kind of a lack of respect and a lack of attention to detail and all this. So these were sort of the big issues, which were in this small issue of how to write Thai words in English. So I said, all right, change it. So and I have a sort of sadness about it, because I feel that now I'm complicit in this, or perpetuating for another generation this sloppy way of representing the Thai language in English script. But so being aware of that. But you see, once, or a very manipulative way of arguing, that you have to be mindful of, is if somebody tries to tell you that, what they want you to believe or accept is the unselfish option, or it's the kind option, or really, as Buddhists altogether, this basically what they're saying is, if you don't agree with me, you're a bad person, and it's very easy to fall for that one, isn't it? Because people are pressing your emotional buttons. You're saying if we really, as people who are trying to live a very kind and unselfish life, I think we really should do this. So what that person is saying is, if you disagree with me, you're unkind and selfish. And in speech, everything is so quick, it's so hard to catch that in time. But it's a really important part of mindfulness practice as well. So seeing, the thing is so there's a question about the khandhas the other day. Is like, when people are speaking, you have to be very sensitive to any change of emotion of people's words, particularly when it's a apparently or supposedly logical argument. But when you feel something going on in your chest, then, what's going on here? What's happening? So when there are often when there's disagreements, you tend to think it's disagreement that you have a different memory than I do of this, or you have a different opinion about this and that. But it's what's behind that, isn't it? It's like what's at stake. My sense of who I am, or my idea of what our relationship is being threatened by this conversation, and that's why sometimes. You said, how did that all go wrong? It's because it was just about this, or it was just about that. But there are all kinds of desires and sense of conceit and sense of self, which is challenged in certain conversations, and it's really important to be mindful of that. But the Buddha gave this checklist. Checklists are really good. This is one of the best things about suttas, checklists. A checklist of a good speech. Do you know these 5 points? Supasita, good speech. What would you think? So it's true, beneficial, timely, kind, polite. And these are the five elements of good speech. So something may be true, but it's not beneficial to the listener, so you don't speak. It's true, it's beneficial, but it's not the right time and place. You're irritated, they're not in a space where they can hear you, so it's not right time and place. Or it's true, it's beneficial, it's right time and place, but maybe you have a sense of irritation, or you want to sort of prove that you're right and they're wrong. So then that's not the right attention, and then sometimes first four points, but you're just too harsh in the speech, and so you need to 5. But then you see, if you from the 5 you get 10, so it's true, untrue, beneficial, unbeneficial, timely, untimely, kindly meant, unkindly meant, polite, impolite, and so you have a checklist of 10. And that's a very good way of establishing mindfulness when someone's speaking to you or at you, and to distinguish these. Because maybe you say, yeah, what that person is saying seems true and it's beneficial, but I'm having this reaction because it's harshly spoken. Or it's true, beneficial, this is the right time and place, but I really doubt about that person, whether that person has a pure intention in bringing this up right now. So it gives you a very sophisticated and right immediate way of establishing mindfulness and discrimination and yoniso manasikara in conversation. What are the 10, Walter?
Oh my God. True.
Yeah.
Right time. Beneficial. 1, 2, 3. Polite. Okay, 4 are not bad.
Kindly. Metta.
Polite and kind is not so far from. Polite and kind is not so far from each other.
No.
And
But you can, yes, well, sometimes you have to be harsh to be kind. Ajahn Mahabua.
And you could be polite and be very mean.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
to humiliate people.
Yeah,
condescending. It's true.
Right.
And in a conversation, if you have this strange feeling, what are you doing then?
Listen to your feelings.
Well, it depends whether it's it's coming from some defilement in your mind, or whether it's because someone's trying to manipulate you. If you feel someone's trying to manipulate your feelings, then it's just to be present and to be aware and not allow that to happen. But if it's something coming from some defilement, then obviously you have to deal with the antidotes for that defilement. But usually, in conversation, you don't have enough time to do all that, and it's more physical. You do it physically, and you just be aware. Don't try and push that feeling away, but just be aware of it. And one thing is just to allow it to feel it. Just go down through your legs, your feet into the ground. You like electric current. Just going to the ground. Paramasa means caress. So it's like this.
Touch.
But it's not holding on like this. It's like this. But there's speaking with Anita's point about loyalty, I think this is a relevant term to use with sila. I mean, so sometimes we get people come to the monastery and they say, oh, you monks, you're attached to the vinaya. Well, I say, well, that's not a very, how can I possibly respond to that? What do I have to break a rule to show you that I'm not attached to it? So
they did with Kandipalo, no?
Pardon?
The Tibetans, they forced this staunch Theravada monk to drink alcohol in front of a Buddha image to show that he doesn't have attachment to his rule. Translator Kantipalo,
Pardon?
Translator Kantipalo, Sorry.
So, I'm proposing that there is a distinction between attachment to a rule and loyalty to a rule and to a system. the fact that you don't. Another analogy is if I would say people in Germany are really attached to driving on the right-hand side of the road.
Wow, awesome.
I've just never seen a German drive on the left-hand side of the road.
Except in England.
So attached. You know? And so prove to me you're not attached to driving on the right side of the road. You know, what can you do?
So would you say liking is a critical? What's the word that distinguishes the two? Loyalty, like, and
It's
for the
loyalty.
emotional which emotional movement makes loyalty attachment?
No, well, I think the point that the Buddha referred to, something I mentioned yesterday, is in Thai it's very nice. It's very literal. It says, "Lift yourself up and put others down." Yok don kom tan. And so, if you keep a precept and then you consider yourself superior to someone who doesn't, then that would be an aspect of attachment.
Yeah.
So, someone who, how people who take on people, they become very missionary about it. Someone who used to eat meat and becomes a vegetarian, has to tell everybody else, or become a vegan, or gives up smoking, or gives up alcohol, and that tendency to want to be evangelize, and or look at those people, it's eating meat, it's so disgusting. So I used to, just the very smell of it, it's just, I don't know how people, how people can get very, sort of self-righteous and think they're special because of some practice they take on. There'd be more attachment.
So, would you say identification is the word, or?
It's a good word, yeah. To create an identity out of something. Yes, it's good.
So, of course, the interesting thing is then, of course, if you say, we praise such and such a monk for having a good sila, or then it is we expressing still that kind of, it's very suggestive, isn't it?
Well,
to say you're better if you praise somebody who has a bad sila, and
no, it's not saying that something's not better, but it's the personality view that arises. I think keeping precepts is better than not keeping precepts, but the mistake is here, therefore I am better because I keep precepts and he doesn't.
But if you use the language the Buddha does, empty man, it's a very, it's very clear what it's meant. That, sort of like words like fallen, or they suggest a kind of similar value system to the attached one. I was looking for a sutta that made your point. But this. I'm not sure if that's percolated a lot through into the English speaking Buddhist world, but the idea of the to develop the German translator's position of the silabbata-paramasa is essentially that it refers to this sila-samvadhanika aspect of the Sotapanna's sila, the first 7 of the aspects describe this very intense loyalty, unbroken, unfettered, unmottled, like it's so solid. But then the last one basically says that it is something that is, in brackets, only for the purpose of attaining samadhi, not for the way that the world uses a sila to regulate groups and to improve the world and to sort of invest into the world, and the idea that this is like and I think your point is exactly comes with that, because this to say I'm better because I have the sila in that arrogant form, it presupposes that you've reached an ultimate kind of situation when if this is just the first step to what really matters, so that you can do your work, you wouldn't.
I think there's also a phrase somewhere talking about pure sila as being untouched by craving and conceit. So there's craving there as well. But for me, the main point is that we always come back to intentionality and volition, cetana, and silabbata-paramasa puts the focus on the action itself too much and overlooks the central importance of intention or volition.
This is probably what they have in common among the two perceptions. If you assume that the sila, your intention is only to create the samadhi, then it would be similar to saying, well, you have your sila only to, you think sila will get you enlightened. I think that the issue is that they feel that sila and bhata are never used in that way, meaning either rite or ritual, and the other thing is that it's the third of the 3 factors, and they're going upwards to be more refined, and so to come with something so ridiculous as thinking chanting is an important thing, and then sort of trying to redress it by including meditation.
Well, I mean, you can say that like rites and rituals is a very poor translation, but you can also see certain spiritual practices as forms of ritual. At the same time, ritual means there's a specific ordered way of doing something which has within it a certain power. That you do things according to like a spell or that's my
Cuenca would be sort of. Tanajan, what is your experience of Mahayana Buddhism in China? You're so often in China, and it's kind of very. I think it must be mostly people who discover it now, is it? Or
well, my experiences of China are very superficial, and I have to write a letter every time I apply for a visa to say that I won't teach anybody. Otherwise they won't let me in.
Tanajan just showed me in his telephone there are like 365 Chinese followers every week to read his messages, and so I take this as extremely beautiful modesty. That
no, I don't need 365 followers when I go to China. if you like, this is a kind of a group in China, just people in a house, in a monastery or in a private house. But if you were to have a if I was to give a public talk attended by more than 50 or 60 people, I'd probably get arrested.
Show them the picture where you went to the nunnery.
That's in a monastery.
It's this picture. Can I tell, or is it? It's just unbelievable. Like, I tell Ajahn to go to a monastery, and you think, well, it's a nunnery. What can it be? It's probably a little bit bigger than Piyadhammo's monastery, but and then it's like the palace of the emperor. It's this giant thing with, it's like intentionally to intimidate the people. This like a football stadium. Like if you come to Olympia Stadium, and then there are these, how many hundreds? Nuns lined up, right to the right and left, and Tanajan singing something, chanting something.
It was lovely. It was really nice.
Impressive. It's more. You cannot. Lovely is when I think that's. I would disagree that it has anything with lovely. It has too much military and emperor type kind of. Will go well with that. Yeah. So.
Well, my impressions are that. Over the past 50 years, the repudiation, the distance from so long spiritual traditions means that in the present moment, Chinese, educated, smart Chinese are incredibly gullible and superstitious and easily fooled, and they pay huge sums of money for these New Age seminars and rubbish, and they have very little discrimination. I mean, in Thai culture, or I still feel there is a certain amount of just basic discrimination. People say, yeah, this is not a good monk, or this is not some. But in China, I met probably the most famous Tai Chi teacher, and I've met Tai Chi teachers in the West, of course, and they have that that presence and that stillness, and that I really like that kind of energy, and so I said, oh yeah, sort of incredible thing. So and so's here, and they're going to bring him to see you and have a cup of tea. And this man walks in with his minders, and he's just got this kind of like.
What's the minders?
Like sort of bodyguard kind of.
Right. Yeah, okay, got it.
And he's sitting there, and he's just sort of like this, so kind of full of himself, and he's got his mobile phone, and he's saying, "Oh, this is Ajahn Jayasaro." Yeah, I mean, if it, for a villager it would be rude, and for someone who's supposed to be, the most prominent one of the most prominent spiritual leaders, you think, and this guy is so successful, and people pay huge sums of money to study with him, and he's all over the country. And for me, I think any one of us would, the moment you met this is not someone I would want to, this is not somebody I would want to study accountancy with, let alone Tai Chi or something with a spiritual dimension. And there were, as I say, in these seminars in Beijing, they've stopped them now. This is going through one of these periodic kind of purges at the moment. But last year, before, there was these like New Age seminars, which Chinese are obsessed with generalization and with health and long life and this kind of thing. So if you have an exercise program, which is a little bit sort of spiritual and a little bit kind of savvy and modern, you do very well. And these seminars were something like 5,000 euros for a weekend, or 10,000 euros. I mean, huge sums of money. and they were absolutely packed out, like thousands of people. And it's just dross. It's just so basically, if you've got a kind of a uniform, you look cool, you can speak, you can talk, you can make huge sums of money in China at the moment.
But isn't a little bit like Thailand Dhamma or in America the evangelical thing? There's a sort of market when money is there, and
I guess I think the difference with it's not such a difference, but I'm always struck when people who are in their work life and in their business life are so smart and sharp and perceptive and logical, and yet in this area of life they just throw that out the window, and just a sort of completely opposite.
Well, the question is whether that it is a product for them. Like what was so interesting, and João told me in Brazil in Sao Paulo, when they had a property, they wanted to have teachings for donation based and free, but for some reason at one point they had these MBSR courses, and they had a protocol to charge a certain sum, and so they said, well, let's have them. Maybe we can win them over for some other things, and they were surprised that a lot of the people they would only come again when there was something where they could pay, and that was important for them. That even though MBSR is very shallow and it's sort of cheap tricks if you want, but it's got a name, it's a brand, it's you pay, it's a product.
I was thinking about this because this thing about my book, and free distribution, and how many places people don't value things if they're free. I was thinking maybe to put for free distribution for a limited period only.
Actually, the Power Dana was like that, because I wanted it to put on Amazon for free, but Amazon has a minimum price, and we try to. One of the tricks you can do, you can say it's free on another platform. Please give us a price match, and they will. But sometimes they're up to that, and.
But what I've done, I didn't do that, but I'm including, say, this book is a gift to you, the reader, from the Buddhists from devoted Buddhists in Thailand, Malaysia and Singapore. Please cherish this gift. So it's making it more like individual.
That's creepy, Tanajan. That's like Jehovah's Witnesses speak, I think.
Never mind.
Well, make a few additions. We had the idea to make when we had the teacher training, to advertise it. It was 31,999 euros. Now only 99 cents.
What was?
When we had the teacher training idea.
Okay.
6-year teacher training reduced for, but no, a friend of mine made the point that if people really don't value what is free or donation based.
Can I just ask him, did you find that a creepy idea?
Yeah. No. Okay.
Nice. I think
it's nice. Yeah. How do you like the idea?
I like the idea very much, but I would like to understand what you mean by creepy idea. I couldn't follow the idea.
Well, it's this kind of, to put emotional pressure on you, and in this kind of way, and like, when the way that the Hare Krishna used to raise funds was they give you a flower as a gift, and they say, you want to give a donation, and so that they would warn in the airports about them, and people became very suspicious about that, and people just distrust if there's something free. Free downloads of books are so easy to get at the internet all the time, and you usually have to give your email address and you get the newsletter, and if you know how to play the game, yes, but it's very clear that it's not free. Gift something, they want something.
I mean, that's why it's not a good analogy, because this is free. And
the sounds.
And we have a problem is that many people will say that when people receive a gift, a book that is free, they don't respect it, they don't give it value because it's free. So I'm reminding people, when they say it's free, it's actually a gift to you, that people have paid for this book and made it out of the goodness of their heart. They've made this book available to you to read free, for free, and just to recognize that this is a.
I know, the reality is amazing. I love it. Put the picture of the person who donated it.
No, that's not possible, is it? There's so many people, hundreds of people.
But when I read this kind of thing, like I know it's a scheme for extremely stupid people now. Like that's just my perception. When people come with this kind of emotional appeal that sort of.
But it's not.
Yes, because a gift is an obligation. You incur an obligation.
Yeah, your obligation is to look after the book. Yeah, I'm willing to ask people to look after this book. That's your obligation.
And I think usually people think that it's more. Something in the back.
How could it possibly be? There's no way that.
But I just wanted to tell my perception, because you and other people ask. Like, just now I had a correspondence with Agi, this woman who works in the White House for the intelligence, and she's had a sort of major collapse, and then she signed up for something, a year of mindfulness, okay? And she wanted to know what I think of it. And the first thing, I just click on the page and I want to see what it costs. And it's like $1,950. So I'm immediately thinking, like, what's his final price? Because it cannot possibly cost exactly $1,950. So instantly my reaction, this is a shakedown. And he probably is aiming at, I'm going to ask her later on, but I'm sure he's aiming at a particular figure, probably 3 or something like that. Do you understand? Because he cannot say $1,999.99. That's ridiculous. So, same with $9,995. He wants a particular, that's the lowest sort of price to sell kind of thing, and then retreats, merchandise, stuff like that are sort of getting to where he really wants to be. So that in itself gets me to see this person as a dishonest person.
No, I don't quite get that. I think maybe we change the subject.
I'm sorry to.
Let's talk about something else. Anybody got a Dhamma question? Yeah.
I would like to ask something on breath meditation. Yesterday morning, before meditation, you gave some instructions, and you said one should find the right balance between relaxation on one hand and awakeness on the other hand. And you described, I think, 2 methods for the in-breath and for the out-breath. Or you should, one should go against the normal tendency. And as regards the out-breath, I can manage to somehow, during the out-breath or with the out-breath, sort of relax the body, but maintain or even improve awakeness. But when I try to do this during the in-breath, when I create or improve awakeness, I also create some sort of agitation, and if I avoid this agitation, dullness might appear. So I can't do this for the in-breath, and therefore I'd like whether you could explain this again.
Yes, maybe I wasn't so clear. Talking about the various ways in which we balance or deal with this relationship between effort and relaxation. You may be familiar with the famous teaching the Buddha gave about the to sona, about the lyre. That if the string is too tight, it's taut and it'll snap. If it's too loose, you don't get the right sound. So this just the right amount of effort. But I'm saying, apart from sort of blending or finding the right amount and of intensity, we can also look at it in terms of sharing. Like for in the body itself, I would say it doesn't really matter, whether you put your hands like this or like this or like this or like this, whether you sit full lotus or half lotus or Burmese style or cross. Those things are not. They don't have a direct causal effect on the meditation. But what does is the spine and the head. So I would say one way of talking about this is to say we put our effort into the spine and the head, and we relax the rest of the body. So there's relaxation and effort in the physical posture. So there's a balance that way. Then the breath. And again, there is, it varies somewhat. But I would say, generally, as the mind becomes more calm, it's the out-breath that tends to become very long and subtle. And I would say that also generally, when the mind does tend to become distracted on the second half or towards the end of the out-breath more than other parts of the breath, because it's kind of like, it's almost like you're working, it's the end of the day, or it's like, to sustain attention throughout the whole in-breath and out-breath, it's difficult, and that's where we tend to relax a little bit too much, get distracted. So the inhalation, there is already effort there, just the natural effort of the body, so you don't need to add any effort. So that's the part of the breath where you can stress the relaxation. You still need to be awake and awakeful, but you can just be relaxed. You don't have to do anything. It does it for you. But on the out-breath, that's the time to put the little bit more effort and care, attention, for the whole duration of the out-breath, to sustain that level of attention right to the end of the out-breath. So this is how the counter was the natural effort of the body on the inhalation doesn't need to be anything added onto it, and can stress the relaxation more than the effort, but on the exhalation then put more into the effort side. But whether it's the more relaxed or more effortful practice, this wakefulness and clarity of mind is always important. So, and I gave a reflection this morning. It's like this is the only morning of this day, and this is the only afternoon. This is the only. But trying to see each breath as like a unique, one-off experience in your life. and not just one breath after another. And I come up with a lot of analogies for this, and another one would be if you can imagine in a third world clinic, and the doctor has a long line of patients, and the doctor, and they may be all the same age and may have all the same similar kinds of conditions, but the doctor gives absolute attention to every single patient. It's a human being. It's not just one in a long line for the doctor if he's a good doctor. And this is the same with the breath. It's like every single breath you give that same kind of absolute respect and attention, one by one by one. So counting breaths is a good, I don't know if any of you practice counting breaths, and there are many different ways of counting breaths. Again, it's a good exercise, mindfulness exercise. And one way that I teach is you count on the in-breath 1, on the out-breath 1, in-breath 2, out-breath 2, in-breath 3, out-breath 3, in-breath 4, 4, 5, 5. And then when you get to 5, presuming that you haven't lost it, so you have this continuity, then you start again, you count 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6. And then you count 1 to 7, and then 1 to 8, and then 1 to 9, and 1 to 10. And that's a cycle. So this is your goal, to be mindful of counting 1 to 5, 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8, 1 to 9, 1 to 10, without losing your mindfulness. So if you lose mindfulness, you have to go right back to the beginning, you see. So at the beginning of a meditation, that's also like a good exercise to do, or just to take up every now and again. And the value of this specific value of changing the number every time means that it can't become automatic, because you can't remember, am I counting to 5 now, or am I counting to 6 or to 7? So it demands a sharpness of mind. The other thing, it's very good for beginning meditators who have the obstacle of they lack self-confidence, and the difficulty with meditation is some kind of a measure, that you're actually making progress, because it's up and down all the time. But if you have this counting, then people will say, yeah, like the first times I did it, I couldn't even count to 5, and now I've got to here and I've got to there, and so people, they get some inspiration from I can do this. It's tough, but I'm actually making some measurable progress, because the difficulty in measuring progress in meditation is a major obstacle for many people who need to have some kind of feedback that this is basically a good use of my time. This justifies the time that I'm spending on it.
Do you know the interview's schedule? It's 15 minutes ago was the first one to start. And then 15 minutes.
And that's for the whole of the period? So still...
Yeah, 8 people.
Okay. So if we... What's 15 from 120?
That's an 8th.
Pardon?
It's 8 people.
Now what's 15 from, subtracted from 120?
105.
Divided by 8.
Divided by 8 is...
13.4. Okay, so everyone's got 13.4 rather than 15 minutes.
That was genius.
Not me. Showing off.